Hey, it's Elizabeth D'Alto, and this is the Untame the Wild Soul podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untame the Wild Soul is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. Welcome to episode number 180 of the Untame the Wild Soul podcast. Today is a different kind of episode. I am the one being interviewed, y'all. I get a lot of messages from listeners who are trying to find their purpose and do meaningful, satisfying work in the world that has an impact in a way they're passionate about and can be proud of. You tell me all the time that you're reaching out because you see me doing those things and want to know how I do it, what were the steps, how did I get started, and how did I get here? So today I invited a dear friend, fellow wild dreamer, entrepreneur, super soulful mama, and former guest, Jadah Sellner, to interview me for this episode so I can answer those questions for you, along with any other juicy questions Jadah could come up with, and she did not disappoint. Enjoy this episode. Be sure to share with anyone you know who's also looking to birth their dreams or their sacred work into the world and have it grow. And let's do this. What's up, everybody? Your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, here today with a very special friend, Miss Jadah Sellner. Jadah is a repeat guest, and for those of you who have not heard her episode, it's episode number 138. So if you fall in love with Jadah by the end of this episode, head on right on over to untameyourself.com/episode-138. And we're doing something different today. We are turning the tables. I actually invited Jadah to come on and interview me for a couple of reasons. One is, if I had a nickel for every time we get an email that's like, I'd love to pick your brain, how do you do what you do? I'd have a lot of nickels. I would not be a gajillionaire, though. I'm not going to exaggerate. But Jadah, what I love about Jadah, she is a super successful entrepreneur, super connected mom and family woman, and she's just someone who has a lot of harmony in her life and has really healthy priorities and experiences. She travels with her family. She's super grounded, and she is an absolute wild dreamer. And she's someone who I love to geek out on all the possibilities with. So that's the kind of person who I wanted to have this conversation with, to tease out of me some of the things I never talk about in terms of the evolution of Wild Soul Movement, how it came to be, and stuff like that. So whether you're an entrepreneur or not, if you're any kind of creative person, or if you're just super curious of some behind the scenes stuff that goes on over here in the Wild Soul Movement world, that's what we're doing today. So I like to give the people what they want, and we get this question a lot. So, all right, I'm giving up control, surrendering, and it's all you, Jadah Sellner.
Love it. That's like phase one, right? Surrender and release.
It is. I use my own stuff.
Yes. So, just when you talked about the wild dreamer piece, I agree. I'm a total wild dreamer, and so are you. So I'm actually curious, for you being a wild dreamer, like where in your life was your first wild dream?
Oh, when I was in actually, it's not true. I think I was 8, and my first wild dream was to be a stand-up comedian.
Wait, you have to tell me more about this. Don't you end it right there.
So remember that VH1 show, Stand Up Spotlight? I think Rosie O'Donnell was the host. And I literally remember being in my living room on Renwick Avenue on Staten Island and being like, wait a minute, this is a job? Because my parents had normal people's jobs. And I'm like, you get to just stand up on stage and make people laugh? Because believe it or not, by the time I was 8 years old, I was already forming into a fairly entertaining human being. So I was like, that looks like a freaking blast. And so what's really funny is, fast forward, earlier this year in March of 2017, I spoke at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, their annual conference, to a room of 100 people at 1,000 people at Jazz at Lincoln Center in New York City. And I invited my parents to come, and I had a green room and everything. It was really cool. And afterwards, my mom was like, that was kind of like stand-up comedy. She's like, you made them laugh a lot.
Yes. Yes. Elizabeth, I feel like that piece, right? If we can look at when we think about origin stories or where things are birthed, we really tapping into the childhood moments and you tapping into that 8-year-old version of yourself, of that wild dreamer. And you make me laugh so much. Like it's like I feel like you are embodying the wild dream of being a stand-up comedian, but you're also helping people get embodied like into their bodies and into their true authentic selves, which I'm really excited to peel the layers of that piece. And I have one more other question just around the childhood piece,
Okay.
which is what did you do for fun when you were 10?
When I was 10, I was such a tomboy and I was absolutely obsessed with basketball and the New York Knicks. So for fun, I played a lot of basketball. I also rode my bike a lot. I would go to my grandparents' house after school a lot. I would literally just like ride my bike around the block like a million times. I loved Super Nintendo, the games like Top Gear and like Super Mario Brothers. And I would straight up, I'm not, those people who could just like listen to a song once or twice and they have the lyrics. I'm not like that. So I would have like a Walkman. I would record songs off the radio and I would listen and pause and listen and pause and I would write out the lyrics so I could learn the lyrics to my favorite songs. So I listened to music. I played. Like I was outside a lot. I played a lot of sports. And yeah, that's what I did for fun.
That's awesome. So there's this piece around that you talked about, the writing, right? Pausing and writing. And I'm curious if you've brought that creative process into what Wild Soul Movement is today.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That conversation that people have about, you put in your 10,000 hours and then you could like call yourself a master or whatever. I'm never going to call myself a master of anything, but if there's something I've put in 10,000 hours on for sure, it's reading and writing. So I think it was Martha Beck in one of her books who said, if you've spent 10,000 hours reading, you've actually also spent 10,000 hours in the craft of writing. Because you've consumed the written word. And so I also was an absolutely insatiable reader even back then. Like as soon as I learned how to read, I remember just like, I've never stopped, And so go ahead.
Are you a physical book reader or do you listen? What's your mode of consumption now?
Physical in the sense of I read a lot on my Kindle because I'll order. In the last month, I've probably ordered 18 books. It doesn't even make sense. And I've read like 6 of them. So, and I traveled a lot this year. So I've adapted to the Kindle. I will order a physical book when it's something I want to like book ear and highlight and posted it up and like really study it because you can highlight things on a Kindle, but it's not the same as just being able to easily flip to the page. Yeah. Audible, I do for like an added layer of study. So I'm actually really outing myself of how much of a geek I am. So like there's a handful of books that I own like in print, on Audible, and on Kindle. So I can literally access it whenever because it's those like layers. I'm very iterative both in my learning process and in my creative process.
I love that. See, that's the piece around the iterative process of creativity. It sounds like you fully immerse yourself into the work. So I'd actually like to unpack Wild Soul Movement and really the birth of a movement is what we're really unpacking today that I really want to geek out on. Cool. So I'm curious for Wild Soul Movement, when was the seed planted? Like the muse, when did it enter your body, your field? What was it? Like just that I want the seed right now.
I think the exact date was September 17th, 2013, because I was on a flight from Los Angeles to New York to go audition for this internet fitness reality show.
This is great.
I think people have heard this on the podcast before, but I'll tell it again, it's like Shark Tank meets American Idol, but for fitness. I had a friend, actually Brett Hobel, who was on the show almost 2 years ago now, who was a judge. And he was like, you should come. Because I was kind of transitioning out of fitness. I didn't know what I was doing. And so as part of my audition, I had to create a class. And at that point, I hadn't been teaching fitness classes for over a year. And I knew going in, like, still I had my finger on the pulse of the fitness industry, and I had an idea for the types of things everyone else would be doing. And so I wanted to create something that synthesized and fused a couple different modalities together that would at least stand out because it was a bit different from what everyone else was doing. At that time, I was also really into the Desire Map by Danielle Laporte. And my core desired feelings were connected, free, wildly feminine, and ease. So I'm sitting on the plane and I'm looking at how can I translate my core desired feelings into a class format. And so I originally came up with these 4 different sections that it was a little disjointed at first, but like that was the seed. And the original name for Wild Soul Movement was the 2x1 method, because it was meant to, and that was also about a little more than a year and a half after I had started studying more like subtle body energy work type stuff. And so the idea was you have a physical body, you have an energetic body. So that was the 2. And then the by 1 was like integrating those things with your soul. But the problem was when I wrote it out, I wrote 2x1, like 2x1. But when people would read it, they would say, "Oh, tell me about the 2x1 method." And I was like, that's a problem. We're going to need a new name for this thing. But that's how it started out.
That's awesome. So with the 2x1 method, what was your process from changing the name? Like what to actually birth the name?
Yeah. I pilot tested it. So I started like testing it out with people. And what started to really come alive was that the connecting to soul was like the integral aspect. And so even in the beginning, the first 2 iterations were still kind of fitnessy. Like there was some working out to it. It was originally like still kind of a workout, not as much of a work in, which I say now. And so in October of 2013, about a little over a month after I had the initial idea, was when I started my first private Facebook group. And I called it the Soul Movement Salon. So it was about having all these like soul moving conversations. And so what was also so cool, because you're in alignment when all the little synchronicities are popping all over the place.
Yes.
It's like the stuff I always say, like, you can't make that shit up. So do you know, I think you do, Jadah Ford, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so at that time, Jadah was available for hire. She's not anymore, which is a bummer for the whole rest of the world. But I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I'm creating this new thing and it's like my new direction. This is actually the thing I've been waiting for my whole life. I just know it in my bones. Are you even available right now to do creative work? I don't even know if I could afford you, but let me know. This was a Facebook message. And she messages me back, are you kidding me? I woke up this morning thinking I want to work with Liz D'Alto.
No.
Yeah. And I was like, this is happening. Yeah. And so it was not particularly an investment I could afford at the time. And so that is when, and people on the show have certainly heard me talk about this during our money episodes. Yeah. That is when I went to take a loan out from the bank of Margaret D'Alto. That would be my mom. I wrote it for the first time in my life. I wrote up a business plan and to just like show her like what it was going to be, the seeds of the idea, right? And like what was the plan and all these things. And my mom has always been super, super supportive. She's like, there's no better investment that I could possibly make than you. And so I cried my face off. I borrowed $25,000 and we got on with it.
Okay, let's pause for a moment there. Because there's so much goodness in there. One, with enrolling your mom into the vision, right? Was there any fear or hesitation, stories? And I'm sure you probably expanded on this in a certain episode that you can link to, but if there's any piece here of being ballsy enough to create a business plan and like, what did you include in that? But first, like, what was the fear or any hesitation that you had to enrolling your mom in the vision and being a beneficiary?
Totally. Because the best part is, we'll link to this blog post, but in October 2013, what had happened before I created that Facebook group was I wrote a blog post called Getting Naked and Falling in Love. which was a blog post that it took me 31 or 32 months to actually publish. I wanted to publish it back in 2011 because it was about my experience of doing a boudoir photo shoot and getting back one of my photos and looking at it and thinking, this is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And then instantly feeling overwhelmed with shame that I felt like a picture of me was super beautiful. And it was like the first time that seed of experiencing my body and my physical form as something sacred beyond just like it being physically beautiful. Because it was like a black and white photo. My hands were covering my heart. My face, it was from like my lips to my rib cage. And there was all this heart imagery. My lips were like a heart. I was covering my breast. So the bottom of my breast looked like a heart. And I had a heart ring on, actually. So, and it was just traumatic. My hair was long at the time. I was just overtaken by that. And so I kind of checked in with my mom because I had a feeling that if I posted a picture of myself topless on the internet, even though there was nothing slimy or trashy about it, but I knew that she would feel that way. And so what I told myself, I was giving her a heads up, I was asking for permission. And when she freaked out, I didn't post it. And I sat on that thing for like 2.5 years. And then when I finally did post it, that was like the launch pad. The amount of messages I got and all these things. And then I started really asking questions in my Facebook posts. And I was getting like a lot of private messages. My friends were texting me and they're like, oh my God. And I just realized that women were not necessarily primed to be speaking about their relationship to their body as a sacred thing. And all the shame and programming and conditioning they had around their bodies in a public forum, like out in the wide open Facebook. So that's when I started that Facebook group. And so that time, though, when I posted that blog, I didn't tell my mom until after I posted it.
I love that. So the permission, you experienced asking for permission before you could actually post it. You got the reaction and you halted yourself from something that was so intuitively pulling you in that direction. Sorry, we're in San Francisco.
So it's called Untamed, the Wild Soul Podcast. Everyone knows this is real life, so we don't mind background noise.
So that piece, and then was that 2 years later that you shared that? 2011.
It was like either 31 or 32 months. Like I originally wanted to share it in February of 2011, and I did not share it till October of 2013.
So you had another hit. Like, how did you uncover that post again? Like where it's like, you know what? I was going to share this experience and now I'm ready to actually share it.
Yeah. So many things were converging at this point in my life. And people have definitely heard me mention this. I had started reading a book by Sally Kempton called Awakening Shakti. And I had discovered all these feminine archetypes that I never knew. I had felt a lot of shame about being like too masculine or like too intimidating or too tough or not soft enough or whatever. And until I realized that like fierce feminine was a form of femininity, I just thought I wasn't feminine. And actually, two of the people who I would often think of are mutual friends of ours. I would think about Sarah Jenks and I would think about Nisha Moodley and I would be like, they are consummate feminine, you know? Like beautiful, like very like home, nurturing, just like so lovely in so many ways that I'm never going to be lovely. And so, but when I found Durga, I was like, oh, she's fierce. And it's still feminine. And yes, so there was a real desire as well to go, oh, I wonder how many other women judge themselves or think that they have to. I didn't have this languaging for at the time, but the way I say it now is like have been operating their entire lives essentially as lovelier versions of men because they haven't known how to connect with and express their feminine side. So I was coming into that and getting the permission to be fierce and from a place of love and honoring myself and not like a cutting fierce, like sticking it to someone or like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Or doing something to be contentious and like, yeah. So I I couldn't not do it. And the quote that went with that post, I don't remember, it might have come up in a meditation or something, or I was journaling, was like, never ask permission to express your soul's desire. Because it was that coming full circle to being like, I asked permission, I shut myself down, and I'm not doing that shit anymore.
Yeah. And I think that's a way that you show up in your business now, how you show up, how you share your voice, your vision, your message is there's no permission. Would you agree with that?
Totally. And I'll tell you something funny that I'm happy to share, because in terms of measuring backwards, it shows how much I've grown up and also how much my relationship with my mom has evolved in like such an amazing way. What I did do to be spiteful was I actually made the picture. I put it on the home page of my website. I would never do that now, just to like, because I didn't need to, but I was like, not only am I going to publish this, it's going on the front page of my website. So she was not pleased, but the degree to which she wasn't pleased was like so much less than the previous whatever. And we all got over it together, you know? But what was funny is I went to her with the business plan like a month later. And there was something in there. So a fear about that was that and I was very clear about this. I'm like, listen, if I borrow this money from you, it's a full loan. You don't get to turn it into a gift, because she used to do that to me sometimes. My mom's super generous. So she would like lend me money and then be like, I decided that's a gift. And I'm like, you're not doing that for this. I'm paying you back. And you have zero say in my business. I am not open for feedback just because you're making this investment. And so if you can't honor that, I will go to a bank and I'll pay interest. And she was like, I can honor that. And, but I did agree. I think I agreed no like fully naked pictures of me on my website, which wasn't a thing I had any need to do anyway, you know, because that was from an experience. So, super funny.
So with that level of belief in yourself, like this, you had this download, right? You've got the two times one method. Births on an airplane based off of a reality TV show. And then this hunch to connect with Jadah, and then hearing the investment, and you came in with like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford this. But where did that belief that this movement, this message that was brewing inside you was worth $25K?
I just knew, like, you know, when you know, there's like not an explanation. And there were also another couple like deeply spiritual practices I was doing at the time where it just became so clear to me. And I'll tell you something else really cool that happened around that really sealed it. So many months later, actually, there was a woman, her name is Durga Holzhauser, who I had like, you know, when you just like circle in the orbits online and like, you know who someone is, they know who you are, but you've never actually connected.
Yeah.
We finally connected. Because she had a dream about me and she wanted to share something with me, and of course, right? And we're having this conversation, and it was so funny because on a side note, she shared something else with me, which I'm going to keep private, but that was the thing I needed to hear. It was so affirming of what I was doing. I burst out crying hysterically, which for me is a mega sign of truth. When this body explodes in that specific kind of tears, it's like, pay attention. Like, it can't be any louder. You can't miss this signal. This is very important for you. And it was like it wasn't even a divine wink. It was divine, like grabbing me by the shoulders and shaking me and be like, hi, you're getting this message we're sending you, right? Mm-hmm. And so that happened during the process. And from then on out, I was like, this is my sacred work in the world. This is what I've been waiting for. What was cool about that is the level of confidence and faith when you know this is what you're here to do. Was like, I can't mess this up. So regardless of the money, regardless of this or that challenge or this foreseeable situation, this is written somewhere. Mm-hmm. This is a directive from way above my pay grade. So it's happening.
Yes. Was there a point, I like reversing and then moving forward as we're like inching through this piece. But was there a time where you were working on your calling, but you didn't have that confidence or the winks or the like shake from the universe, but you thought that was the thing? Because what I'm trying to create is the listeners, right? you're 3 years into a movement that is birth and is walking and moving and serving and changing people's lives. But people who are coming into the Wild Soul movement, they're at such a fragile place where it's like, is this the calling or is it not? And so I'm curious for you, was there an iteration of your work before this like very clear download that was like, I think this is it?
You know, I'm such an all-in kind of person that like everything I had done over the course of my trajectory started out as, I think this is it.
Yes.
And then I would reach a point of being like, this isn't it. Because there has to be more. There has to be more.
Yes.
Like, and feeling the tension of not really using the amount of potential that I felt inside of me, not having the impact I really felt like I was here to have, and just like not helping people in a way that honestly to me felt like good enough or like satisfying enough and really deep enough.
Yeah. So what was that work right before diving into this, where you basically had an alignment check, right? Like,
Yeah.
I need more. I want more. Can you just take us through that?
Yeah. So there was actually something transitional I did in 2013 where I was like, okay, let me pop out of fitness for a moment. And I had teamed up with a friend at the time, and we taught a program called the Complete Body Program, where we basically integrated physical body and subtle body. So we were both Reiki masters, or she was a Reiki master at the time. I wasn't yet, but I had done 2 Reiki attunements. And so we taught the subtle body, we taught the chakras, we taught, a bunch of other things that people could integrate with their physical body practices. And even that, like it was a near miss. I'm like, this feels more aligned, but there were a couple things about it that were off because there was still something about using another modality, for example, like Reiki or like the chakra system, that I was like, this is not it, because the core thing about Wild Soul Movement is everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you. Mm-hmm. It's, now we have finally arrived at the correct tagline, which is become the living, breathing embodiment of feminine truth and power. And I know it sounds like a tall order, but when we talk about embodiment and when we talk about empowerment, they go hand in hand, because you become embodied through the relationship you develop. You become empowered through the relationship you develop to your own body. So I'm not here saying this is the framework and this is the system. Work yourself into it. I'm saying, actually, here's a journey in self-discovery inside a container that you're going to be able to discover your own. What works for you. You are going to empower yourself within this container. I'm going to guide you, but I'm constantly going to be inviting you to check in with yourself and discover, yes, that's true for me. No, that's not. And like, that was the missing piece of other modalities. So like, I used the word earlier of like synthesizing a couple things when I first designed it. I am a synthesizer. I do that in a lot of things. I love like this, and this, and like, let's make a recipe. Because I think there is a lot of danger with frameworks and formulas, because they will work for some people. Some people are built to follow them. So many people are not. And the people who aren't rarely go, oh, that wasn't for me. They're like, what's wrong with me? I'm the worst. They compare themselves to all the people it does work for, when it's just like, you know what? You're a uniquely designed person. You got to figure out your own way. And it's a longer game. It takes a good amount of work and resilience, but who you become in that process is like who you're here to be,
Yes. Oh, I love that. Being in it for the long game. Yeah. That's building an aligned business and being tuned in and working. You say working in, right? That work, the process is longer and it is iterative. It's this like ever evolving evolution of like mini chapters that keep unfolding. I think that piece I'm curious about for your business, when we're talking about bodies, we're talking about business, we're like dancing in between these two, but in your business, did you feel that this isn't working for me? The frameworks aren't working for me. that really allowed you to step into what this business is today?
Yeah, that was actually a really big part of it, because right before that seedling dropped in on that flight in September 2013, like literally 3 weeks before that, I had ended a long-term relationship. And, you know, you're familiar with my former partner. He was someone who teaches like online business and strategies and stuff like that. And I had spent a good majority of the previous 3 years, basically 2011, 2012, 2013, I spent a lot of time with people who ran online businesses a certain way. And I had tried all of their methods and it wasn't working for me. And I sat in so many events, private masterminds, feeling like absolute shit, because exactly what I described. It was working for everyone else and it wasn't working for me. And I'm sitting there going, I really care. I have a lot to offer. I have gifts that I'm not expressing. I don't know. I think probably, I mean, there's a lot of things to be in pain and suffering about in this world. But for me, one of my greatest pain points and something I suffered harder and longer than anything else was not fully expressing myself.
Yeah.
So, and it was the irony as well. Again, that October 2013 was a very pivotal month for me. I was at the event when Marianne Williamson announced that she was going to be running for Congress. And during that event, she told the story of David and Goliath and how there were all these like decorated warriors saying to David, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. And he went in with his slingshot and he's basically like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do this my own way. And again, I just started crying and I'm like, that was exactly, I was in the transition as well of going, great. I essentially just learned all these rules and now I have to break them.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
I want to pause, because whenever you soften, like I hear a moment and around the not being fully expressed. Is there a moment in your childhood that you can remember of feeling not fully expressed, or just, you know, an early moment on?
You know, what's funny is my family's always been super supportive. I come from an Italian and Puerto Rican family for the most part. So like being loud, like being expressed is like pretty welcome in my family of origin. I had one aunt, I remember my brother and I would die laughing, who one time asked us to use our inside voices. And we were like screaming, "What's that?" And then we just went to town, being even noisier than we already were. But that said, expression was encouraged. But because I grew up in the Catholic religion, there was sometimes a clamp on what was appropriate or what was not appropriate. And so things that would be very intuitive to me or that I would like sense or notice or whatever, sometimes those things would be made wrong because it was in the context of a very specific framework of what was right and wrong. So that was a little confusing because it's like, yeah, be yourself. You could do anything. And here's the guidelines.
Yeah.
Hi, mamas. Quick break in the show to invite you to some special events we've got going on this week for those who are listening in real time. Today, July 31st and Thursday, August 3rd, I am doing encores of the Woman Reclaim Yourself workshop that I ran last week. It's happening online and there are recordings available, but it was so fun and so beautiful to get to connect with so many of you in real time, live, online. So I wanted to give us all 2 more opportunities to have that experience this week. You can register at wildsoulmovement.com/reclaim. And especially for those of you who continue to come back to episode after episode of this show, because you get little seedlings, you find little pieces of truth or little insights that help you to put together the pieces of your own path and continue on your own journey of personally reclaiming and redefining womanhood. This is totally designed for you. So again, that link is wildsoulmovement.com/reclaim. When you visit that, it will register you for both of those times. So you'll be able to choose whichever one works best for you, or maybe you love it so much you want to come to both. And if you're listening to this after the fact, you can head on over to that link anyway, wildsoulmovement.com/reclaim, and we'll send you a little surprise. All right, y'all, back to the show.
So now let's talk about Wild Soul Movement and how you built it into today. It's a business.
Yeah.
It's your livelihood. But it was a seed on an airplane, and then moving into that iterative process. What was the first iteration of it being in the world to people, where it's no longer 2 by 1, that it's actual Wild Soul Movement?
So there were all these words. So part of the iterative creative process that was so fun was actually rolling around with like these words and these ideas and these themes. And some of the words were like passion, fire, soul, feminine, sacred, woman, womanhood, those types of things. Movement, of course, embodiment. And so we were sitting on the beach in Venice Beach at the end of Rose Avenue, me and Jadah, like in the sand. And we are going like, what are we going to name this thing? Obviously 2 by 1 isn't working. And, we were working soul movement. Like we honed in like the name of that Facebook group, right? Like the soul movement. There's something there. Oh, wild was obviously one of the words. And she was like, what about wild soul movement? And we were both like, that's it. Like, of course, sitting by the ocean in the sand, like shoes kicked off. That's where the name actually landed. And what's interesting? What I can't remember is how the themes, the topics of Wild Soul Movement, I can't remember how they came to be. But I think, go ahead.
I think I can help you remember.
Really?
Yes, because you went through a deep inner transition.
Yeah.
And you unpacked your process.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think I just reverse engineered my own process.
Yes. I'm almost baffled that because I remember you just like, this is what I did to move through kind of this old business model, this old identity that was no longer like your work in the world. And could you just, unpacking the framework of what Wild Soul Movement is, because you can find the touch points of surrender and release is the first, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's true. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. And it's funny because as I was saying it, I was thinking like, I think I actually just reverse engineered my own process, because that's how I am. It's actually one of the reasons. So I recently decided I can't coach people anymore. I mean, I won't coach people anymore. Certainly I can. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to run a teacher training and mentor people through my teacher training, but not in any other context anymore. And one of the reasons why is because I'm really only willing to share from my own experience. And that it's not effective for everyone, But honestly, as women, for all of our differences, we have so many things in common. So for the people who can totally resonate to where I was, like operating the world as a lovelier version of a man, trying to figure out what's my sacred work in the world, who am I and what am I here to do, and like be expressed and contribute and have impact in a way that like feels in integrity and feels in alignment without necessarily following all the formulas. We don't even need to get to the conversation about patriarchy, which has developed into a piece of the purpose of being like, oh, and we're just going to we're going to contribute as much as we possibly can to dismantling the old patriarchal systems, which suck and oppress people too, through our own liberation and embodiment. But it's like part 7 of the conversation. But I reverse engineered my own process, and it took that. I was submitted. I didn't willingly surrender. It happened because I went through a breakup. I didn't want to live where I was living anymore, and I had to move on, and I didn't want to be doing the business I was doing anymore. So that's when life goes, it's time. Come on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make it hurt so that you have to pay attention. And that's what happened. And so I didn't willingly surrender. I kind of was like, I submitted to life, and I was like, all right, now I'll surrender. And I had so much to let go of to create the space, physical, mental, emotional space to even create.
Yes.
And then that required, the next thing is like, okay, now so much uncertainty, you got to trust. And at that point, I was really getting into my connection to people say higher self. That's when I say wild soul, I'm talking about your higher self. That just like very true, deep core of your nature, of who you are, and that infinitely wise part of you, right? This isn't your ego self or your mind. This is your freaking wild soul that is like the infinitely wise part. Be receptive, because there's messages coming in all of the time, and body is my vehicle to access that. Like that's why we do like sensual movement and meditation, and we use mantras to kind of like, it also is a metaphysical practice. There's so many things, Jadah, that I didn't even know what they were, that are baked into this program, that over the years, as I've continued, because I'm an insatiable nerd, I'm like, oh, somatic experiencing, oh, Kundalini yoga, oh, like it's, and I have friends who do a lot of like trauma resolution. They're like, for a person who's not certified in any kind of trauma resolution, this program is like very trauma informed, because it's, and I'm like, but the reason why is because it's very considerate of the individual experience, and it's constantly having someone check in with themselves. How do you feel? Do you feel safe? Like, what's going on in your system? And like, let's share that in a safe container. Like, safety is such an integral part of it, you know? And connecting to self and being honest and becoming literate with your feelings and your sensations. So receiving was a big piece. And then worthiness stuff. I don't love the word worthiness. But wild dreaming and desire is kind of like the flip of that, because when you don't feel worthy, what do you not feel worthy of? I don't feel worthy of my desires. I don't believe I deserve to have my dreams fulfilled, right? So by focusing on really reclaiming those desires and building them out into your wild dreams, that handles the worthiness thing. And then we got into love and creation, which we're all super powerful creators. And it's kind of like, another way I put it is like, I'm really helping people integrate so that they can become masterful in like a feminine way of doing, which isn't all like hustle, hustle, hustle. There's a lot of alignment. There's a lot of flow. There's a lot of recalibration, and there's a lot of room to be pivoting as you go, because we're constantly changing.
Yes. So that the wild dreaming for you, that was kind of when you were working with Jadah, would you say? Or did you do pre-dreaming before you worked with her?
I think it's just like always happening. Like even now, like when I think I've dreamt as big as I can, it's like, no.
Yes.
Silly.
And then the love, like the space and the creation, because this is what I'm seeing in your process, because I want to unpack this so that people can really see how to move through it. But you have this download, this idea, that this seed that is planted and it's incubating. Like you're just sitting, you're swirling with it, words are coming at you. And then there's this process where you get your idea that's been planted onto page, onto paper. So now, you know, it was 2 by 1 at one point, but that was right? Getting that idea onto paper, into structure, into format. And then you did a collaborative process of giving voice to this vision with Jadah in collaboration. So you're planting the seed, then you're putting your idea to paper, actually getting it out of your head and into the world. And then you're feeling safe enough to actually share that vision and give it a voice. And from that process, then comes the space to create. Yeah. You have to create the space to test and experiment. And then that's what this last 3 years has been about.
Yeah.
Was to actually create.
Yeah.
And to have like embrace beta, right? That you didn't, like when you did your first, did you know, like you're like, this is it? Or did you know that this would be an evolution?
Here's what was so interesting. So I had done 2 beta runs of it. And so when I did officially launch it into the world in 2014, I did think this is it. And then Wild Soul Movement was like, this isn't it. Like, this is going to be an ever evolving thing. And I want to mention, because, you know, Rachel Pesso, we have both worked with Rachel. Rachel was another integral part of that creative team. Her and Jadah had actually gone to design school together. And so they knew each other. Because another one of those like synchronistic things that happened is Jadah was the creative director, but I needed a graphic designer. And I had been speaking to this one girl, and I literally was like at the bank. She was in New Zealand or Australia, I forget which one. And so I had to like wire transfer her money, and I showed up to the bank and I didn't have like a Swift code, or like there was some code I needed. And something in me was like, this is because it's not your person. And I messaged Jadah and I was like, hey, do you have any other recommendations? Because this really funky thing just happened. And I feel very strongly that it's not, I didn't forget the friggin' Swift code to just come back to the bank later. So, and she's like, yeah, let me contact Rachel. And then when we connected with Rachel, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the freaking dream team. And like, I still work with Rachel to this day. And like, there's just been this amazing, she just nails me. She just like, whatever I communicate, it's like, I know some people have horror stories. We're with graphic designers. We have to like go back and forth 17 million times just to like make an inch of progress. And like with me and Rachel, it's like, here's what I need. And she sends it to me and I need to like tinker 2 things and it's like nailed. It's so good. So that was really big. But then the other part, I want to address what you talked about, because have you read Big Magic or listened to Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk?
I've listened to her. I listened to the audiobook. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you get like, she talks about how there's this like field of ideas floating around and something does like basically invite us to dance. And so when I accepted that invitation to dance, I didn't accept the invitation to dance. I accepted the marriage proposal. So part of that was like, anyone who's ever been in any kind of serious relationship, a relationship is also going to grow and evolve. And so there is this, like, I'm constantly in dialogue with Wild Soul Movement as if she is an entity and an energy of her own, and she is my creative partner. And I'm going, what do you want to do next, girl? We're doing this thing. You show me. Like, even when we go through, like, we're in an enrollment period right now, I never have any way of knowing how many people are going to join us, right? And we're recording this weeks in advance, so at the time the interview goes live, there's probably, like, God only knows how many people have decided to join us. But and to me, it's not about, you know, when people are like, what's your income goal? And I'm like, I don't really do income goals. I do, hey, Wild Soul Movement, you show me how fast you want me to move on the rest of the vision that we are cooking up together by providing the resources through whatever it is that we've got going on that we're inviting people into, you know, because it's like, we're here to have an impact. And I just trust, like, it's a very collaborative, you know, and I know for some people, this is, you know, very esoteric kind of way of looking at things, but it's how it's always been with me and Wild Soul Movement.
Yes. And I think that piece is really important to remember as you're building a business that is aligned, that you're really leading from this place of embodiment and what feels good and feels like the right next step, and proving yourself right along the ways instead of trying to say, maybe this isn't right. You're just moving with like signs, opening, doors opening, or like, show me, and then you sit and receive. Can you give me an example, a story, even in the moment of this current launch, like that practice? Because I hear it, but I want to see it. I want to feel it. Like, how, just give me an example of how that
example
unfolds.
Is this. I love when I open registration or enrollment for anything to do info and Q&A calls. Because there's always there's only so much that you can communicate on an enrollment page. And we live in an age and time where, you know, and it's always been this way. People learn differently. So like, some people listen to this podcast. Some people like to watch the podcast. Like, everyone's just different. And we're so inundated with so much media these days since the evolution of social media that I like to just do these calls where I just explain things and give people a chance to ask questions. And so the day we opened enrollment, July 7th, I did an info and Q&A call. And then there was like a techie glitch, something with Facebook Live. Like, the way I set it up didn't work. I ended up deleting it after and not posting it the way I was supposed to post it. And over that weekend, I realized, again, it was kind of like going to the bank without the Swift code. I'm like, oh, I was addressing in that call, like, the very left brain, like, kind of like bullet point questions that are already on the page. I'm like, I know my women. These aren't the questions they have. My women are intelligent. Whereas, you know, people will be like, you got to make things so simple a kindergartner would understand it. I'm like, my women are adults and they're intelligent and I respect them. And I'm not going to talk to them like they're morons. So, you know, I trust them. So I realized, I was like, oh, the questions that are arising for my women when they're considering whether or not to join this program are like existential questions. Because they're standing on a threshold and they're looking at this and they're feeling, am I ready for this? It's not really there's a little bit of, is this for me? But if they've even taken the step to consider joining Wild Soul Movement, the biggest question is, am I ready for this? Do I have the capacity for this? Am I willing to go here? And there's fears. If I really untame myself, am I going to lose everyone I love? Like, am I going to want to burn down my career? Am I going to lose my family? Am I going to outgrow everyone? Those are the questions. And so after like stewing over the weekend, I'm like, why did I mess up that video? I was like, sure, answering all the wrong damn questions.
Yes.
And so, so I rescheduled that, and I'm like, let's do this again. Let's mulligan this, because that was it was a false start, you know? And it happens, and that's giving yourself the permission to correct course, even right in the process. That is a very feminine thing. The feminine is like very inconsistent and very adaptable and very resilient and also very perceptive. So I don't apologize for that stuff. And for some people, I'm like, listen, if you're not into this, if you need me to be like very rigid and very structured and like know what to expect, definitely don't come in closer to my work, because there's going to be structure and there's going to be a very tight, energetic container for all the transformation and the healing and the work that happens inside. But there's going to be some uncertainty. There's going to be some variety, because although it is a group program, it is really very specifically designed, and I'm happy to claim this as a zone of genius, for people to have an individual experience. That's not about me as the teacher or my method, you know, like those core topics, even that, like, that's my framework, but there's so much room to explore within, you know. The mantras are specifically selected for people to have whatever experience they need to have. I've started calling it like, it's kind of like medicine. Like, you know, if you have cramps and you take an Advil, the cramps go away. If you have a headache and you take Advil, the headache goes away. The Wild Soul movement is like that. Whatever you've got going on right now, it's going to get up in there and find it and address it. And it's also, for that reason, efficient in the sense of, I know there are so many programs out there, but now that I've been running this for 3 years and I've had women in the community for 3 years, and I'll see, they'll be all in, they'll be like doing their Wild Soul movement work, and then I won't see them or hear from them in our Facebook group for months. And then they'll come back in because they've got something going on. So it's also something that's designed to meet people no matter where they are in their evolution. It's something that they can return to. And even on the framework note as well, here's another example, and I think this is important for people who are designing their own things or who are taking other things, whether it's my stuff or not. When I originally created Wild Soul Movement, it was created to be a 12-week program. And I actually did 3 rounds of Wild Soul Movement before I realized I had to break that rule. Because the work is deep and it is transformative. And this is a big part of our culture, to think we have to like stay in line, follow the rules. This is the way it works. And if I can't fit myself into that, there's something wrong with me. And I'm like, nope. So some women, depending on the topic or the specific mantra, whatever was like their history, would have a lot of stuff coming up, and they would need to spend extra time with it.
Yeah.
And even in the framework of 12 weeks, I was like, listen, it says 12 weeks, but take your time. People were like, they would still think, no, it's supposed to be this way. And it's like, and I wanted to remove any inclination people would feel to try to follow it in 12 weeks. Yeah. So I took that off, and I was like, there's 12 practice videos, there's 4 topics, there's 12 mantras, there's journaling questions for all the mantras. You take your time with this. Because your journey all the way through, the whole entire thing is going to be different than other people's, you know? And then once you go all the way through, you'll be able to come back and be like, I could use some sharpening up of my trust in receiving this week, you know? And then people can kind of come back where they need it and apply it where they need it. But I was like, this is way more respectful of people who are individuals, and removing what I know will impose pressure on them, even though I'm saying you don't have to follow it. We're so conditioned to follow the freaking rules. So I had to remove the rule.
I love that so much. Just that, I mean, you ripped the Band-Aid off of like what's expected, right? Of like, this is the structure, because people want results in 3 months.
Yeah.
Or they want it in 48 hours. I'm sure you wanted the results that are happening in your business today 3 years ago.
I really did.
So how do you recommend that somebody moving, like their wild dreams and desires are 3 years ahead of them, and how do they pace themselves to like, I'm here today. Like, how do you do that in your business and in Wild Soul Movement to pace yourself with where your vision, your wild dreams and desires are?
I love this question. I was just actually yesterday, I was in the car with a friend and we were talking about how do I stay so present with what's right in front of my face while so connected to my vision? And I'm actually getting emotional because it really does. It really has to do with trusting yourself.
Yeah.
And it really has to do with in the moments when the fear comes up, which, and it's gonna, is remembering that like the fear is not real. It's not the truth. So it is real. You feel that shit and it feels intense. So like, let me take that back and like re-articulate. The fear feels very real. It might even feel like life-threatening. It might even be pressing on all your survival buttons. If you've got bills to pay, if you've got a family to feed, if there's just people who have believed in you along the way and you like haven't made it yet and you feel like they're going to, at what point are they going to stop believing in me, right? So it feels so real and it could be so loud and so intense. And those are the moments. Danielle Laporte wrote this beautiful blog post called like, this is, and she said something like, this is why we practice. All your meditation, all your journaling, all your self-help, all your personal development is easy to practice when the rubber is not on the road.
Yes.
But once that rubber touches that road and shit gets real, that's when you need the faith. That's when you look back and you go, I am resilient. Look at everything in my life that I have made it through. I have got this. And you just, whatever you need to do to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I will say, this is why I only do group programs now, because no one does anything on their own.
Yeah.
You need people who are going to support you, who are going to keep you accountable, and you need people who are going to cheer you on even when your face is in the frigging dirt. Because no one makes it through without getting their face in the dirt. Yes. For real. And like grinded in and rubbed in sometimes. Like you need the people that are going to pick you up, dust you off, hold you and be like, I still believe in you. You still got this. And you know, that's one of the beautiful parts about our community. My women, they root me on that way. I don't even ask, but like there are times when I'll show, I'll be like, hey, we messed something up. We got to pivot. We got to do this. And the response, people are never pissed off at me. Or if they are, they don't say so. Most people are like, thank you for showing us that you can like fall and get back up. Thank you for owning up to like that you messed up or whatever, you know, like it's the real journey. It's not the flash in the pan stuff. And so, you know, even women this year in our community, they make me cry all the time. 2 women left like very abusive relationships this year. And they were like constantly plugging in, being like, you guys have no idea how much the support in here. Like this is the most supportive place in my life. And it's just like, great. Like that's one of the things when I say I didn't even realize what I was creating. I didn't actually know how good I was at creating and setting an energetic container and building a community that like, you hear the term safe space a lot these days in a lot of different contexts, but like for real, like pristine space, even on frigging Facebook in my groups, because we have clear guidelines. And so that's a real, and I had that for myself. So in terms of like reverse engineering, like I've had people like you, people like a lot of our mutual friends, like my family always to like, I'd get beat up, they'd dust me off and be like, you know, you got this, like just keep going, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Just the piece around community that we don't do business. We don't do life alone.
No.
And with Wild Soul Movement, I think this is one of your superpowers too. Your zone of genius is creating the energetic container, but the community with safe boundaries. I think safe space, right? That's the word. Even my husband and I joke about that. Like we use all the terms like safe space. Like,
yeah.
But it's these bold, brave boundaries that you model for yourself, that you integrate into your business and into your programs that you offer. And that's not easy. It's not easy to communicate those boundaries and hold them up in all areas of your life. Is there any piece around that you can share with the boundaries that you've set up for how you show up in life and business?
So this was one of the biggest gifts of me discovering that Durga, that like fierce feminine archetype. It actually is easy for me because I'm built that way. that mama bear, like protectress fires up. And I'm like, no, absolutely not. And especially, people ask me all the time, do you think you'll ever have kids? And I'm like, I don't think so, because I really feel like I mother constantly.
Yeah.
And I feel like my community, like I'm the mama bear, and like I will under no circumstances like let anyone mess with my women. And it's not like a controlling thing. It's not like but it's just like I've observed and I've been in enough unsafe spaces to know what does not work and to get clear through that contrast on what does not fly in my space.
Yeah.
And so, it's not hard to enforce because, and this is where like being an empath and a feeling person and where some of that potential comes. So a lot of the pain of when I wasn't fully expressing the potential was I cared so much. I am just built that way. I've never been able to do anything that I didn't care about. The 1 year I worked in corporate America was torture for me because I didn't give a shit about selling uniforms to hotels. It didn't help anyone. It didn't improve anyone's life. Like there was nothing, like all the years that I worked selling Cutco knives, I was literally, if anyone who's a mom listening to this who has to cook for their freaking family every day knows that an amazing set of knives actually saves you so much time. I've seen how many Airbnbs I've stayed in this year where the knives were crappy and I'm like, this is the worst, so in some way, shape, or form, it was like improving somebody's life. And again, not that I was like the giver of the gift. I didn't make the knives, like even with Wild Soul Movement, I'm not the one doing the work. The women who take the program, they do the work. But to be the guide, to be the facilitator, to know that I'm doing something that matters and that helps in a world that there's so much chaos, there's so many things to constantly be like triggering and traumatizing and chaotic and dramatic, to be a place where people can get like respite and grow and build their resiliency and have real connection is like, I cannot ask for anything more. This is like, I am fueled and like the passion is just like constantly churning until the end of time.
So beautiful. So what are ways that people can interact, engage with Wild Soul Movement today?
Okay, so this interview is actually, it's episode number 180. So any of these links, anything I mentioned will be in the show notes. So you can go to untameyourself.com/episode-180. And right now on July 31st, 2017, enrollment for the Wild Soul Movement virtual program is actually open until the end of the day on Friday, August 4th. So if you're like, what's this program all about? Go to wildsoulmovement.com/join. If you want to experience the movement practice, go to wildsoulmovement.com/meditation. There's a short Wild Soul Movement meditation practice, because that's really what it is, to embody self-love. So it's especially, I picked a universal mantra and a universal topic because like most people could embody a little more self-love any given day of the week, no matter what you got going on. And if you want to just be part of the community, there's a couple different layers. Obviously, the most intimate layer to the community is my teacher training program. And then after that is the Wild Soul Movement virtual program. And then after that is our free Facebook group, which you can go to untameyourself.com/Facebook. And there's literally, at this point, like 4,500, 5,000 women in there from all over the world. So much amazing, like brilliant shared wisdom, like all kinds of things that are happening in there all the time. It's gotten so amazing. I've had to like hire some community managers to like help me. Because I'm only one person and I can't keep up with all the people. And I want them all to come.
I want to talk about, I want to wrap up, but I also, the teacher training piece, because you're spreading this movement beyond just what Elizabeth D'Alto and Wild Soul Movement can do together, like in your marriage, your partnership.
Yeah.
So tell me how this piece, because I think this is, it feels so sacred. It like, I've seen you sharing stories of people already teaching. I just want you to unpack this piece, because this was not part of the original vision.
It was not part of the original vision. I was still a little bit detoxing from like my online marketing training of like, you got to scale your business, sell blah, 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 like so many this, whatever. And I'm like, oh my God. I listen to my women. And I notice, and I have my own experience, like of dying behind my computer. I'm like, this is great, but like, I want to be with people in real life. You know, like if it's my zone of genius to facilitate online virtual space, in real life, that's like my zone of genius.
Yes.
You know, it's like, and we've done it. Like you guys did Wild Some Move with me in like our friend's backyard on Lake Tahoe. Like something magic just happens. So
It was beautiful.
to have women together, having that experience together and open their eyes and look around and be like, we're all so beautiful and so sacred in our own ways. And having felt shared live experiences of that magic, of like coming back to our own sacredness, women have asked me, like, when can I do this in real life? And I thought I had to just do retreats and stuff. And retreats are kind of expensive for people. Like, I also know that it's actually one of the reasons why this year we added an extended payment plan, because I just know not everyone's going to be able to invest in the program. We're actually making a mini course that'll come out at the end of August for people to like get started who maybe weren't able to swing full out Wild Soul movement this year. Because I'm like, I know people want access, so how can I make things that are more accessible that still feel aligned with like the mission and the integrity of the program? But I myself was craving to hold space and be in circles with women in real life. And, you know, I love to travel anyway, but women were asking for it. They were like, I love doing the program. I love doing the movement, but I would love to like meet you all in real life. You know, like there's women who have these friendships where it's like they've known each other for years inside of a Facebook group, you know, and occasionally they meet up in real life and like they send me pictures and I cried. I'm like so happy because I've had that, you know, like in Marie Forleo's B School community, there's people I've known for like years and then I meet them in real life and I feel like I'm closer with them than some of the people in my actual day-to-day life, you know? So I was like, I want to start running workshops and I'm only one person. And I knew for sure that I don't want a lifestyle where I'm like a traveling yogi. Like, you know, some of those like world-renowned yoga instructors, it's like every day it feels like they're in a different town. I'm like, I don't have the constitution. I'm not built for that. I need like plenty of time in my home space. So I'm like, well, I can just teach other people how to do this and even apply the everything you've ever needed has always been inside of you your own way. Like teach them the format, and go and do it your own way. Right? So like bring you, because the other thing I also noticed in my community is so much desire to create and serve. So there's a lot of women who are entrepreneurs or coaches or some kind of healer or maybe a teacher or a yoga instructor, and they have such a desire to create or serve, like the same freaking thing I felt back in the day when it was my biggest pain of my life. Yes. And not everyone is built to create their own program or be the face of a business or like build a brand online or whatever. And I'm like, hi, why don't you I already did all of that. Just come be on the team and I'll teach you the thing. And you can just like go out in the world and do it and eliminate like 3/4 of the struggle. I gotcha. You know? So it was twofold. I saw it as two ways to serve is to create many, many, many more experiences and also all over the world and also in languages I don't speak. You know, like we have women, like European women who can come in and then they can go back and do it in their native tongue. And it's like, yes, or not just European, all, you know, all the continents, all the people, you're all welcome. But so twofold. It's like actually breathing some life into some people's creativity, sustainability in their entrepreneurial journeys or desire to serve, whereas they were struggling with certain aspects of it, and also like creating the experiences. So it's so like, it's so fun.
Was there any piece of that, I'm curious, that you were hesitant or not like this, it might be too big? Like, do I want to build a business like at this level? Was there any fear or resistance or hesitation, or did you just go all in like before making the decision? I'm always wanting to check in on the decision.
Not before the decision, because often the way Wild Soul Movement works is she'll tell me what I need to do next and I'll be like, okay. And I'll just take the steps and then go, we'll see what happens. And so even from the first round of teacher training that I did this past year, it's already evolved. Some changes have already been made. Like class of 2018 is going to have a different experience. Many of the same integral elements that are important, but different from the first class. And she'll continue to do that. It'll evolve as we evolve. And also we look at like the world around us and what are people needing and what are people craving and what are people wanting and what's in alignment, again, as we all grow and evolve together as a community.
All right. I love that. I want to just acknowledge you for a minute,
Oh,
Elizabeth
thanks.
Cialto, of what I've witnessed in this conversation and the evolution and the birth of a movement, Wild Soul Movement. One thing that I noticed was you just being able to surrender, but unintentional surrender. There's a gift in that to really do the work, the inner work for yourself, even when you're like, I'm not ready. I don't want to. And I think that's what you're calling these women into, is this bigger vision, this bigger mission, that it's like, even if you don't feel like you're ready, it's time to do the inner work, to put your soul's work out into the world. Another thing is you are so fully expressed, like you embody wild, feminine, fierce feminine energy. And you are a personal model for me of like, to just say what's on your heart, what's on your mind, and really share your true voice in the world. And I think it's such an inspiration for so many women to see you just being you. So I am thankful that you had that like longing to be fully expressed and fully own that. And I think you unpack that out loud for people to witness you, where you put stuff out and you retract and you're like, that didn't work. I'm cleaning up my mess here. But it's a gift for your transparency, for us to witness the highs and the low. And I just want to thank you for that. Also, the piece of breaking rules. You are a rebel with a mission to like change so many people's lives. And if anyone can really take those pieces into that, you can break the rules when it's in service of caring about people. And that's something that I heard you say, is that you really, really care about people. And so what a gift for anyone that gets an opportunity to work with you. It's like, you love your women all over the world, and you get to break rules. You get to break all the rules, all the structure, all the methods, frameworks, when you just really care about people and lead with love. And I think you are a true embodiment of that. And I just want to thank you for your heart, for your gifts, for you owning your zone of genius and your zone of genius out loud. It's such a gift. And I think what you're doing is you're creating ripple effect impact, not just impact, but like ripple effect, that you're changing people's lives on so many layers. And you continue to dance with your muse. And I am so excited to see what she has in store for you. So thank you.
Thanks, friend. I knew you were the right person to invite for this. It was so good. I love your questions. So for anyone listening, whether you feel inspired to like join us for Wild Soul Movement in any capacity, or whether you're like, I can just follow my desires, I can just follow my dreams, and I can do it in a way that feels right and true and good to me, like, go back and listen to Jadah's episode 2, because we talked about that a lot. Jadah is all those things that she just said about me. A lot of them are also her. So this is what we're here for. We do not have to do things the way they have always been done. So Jadah, thank you so much. I love you mucho. Everyone listening, again, show notes for this episode are at untameyourself.com/episode-180. And check out Wild Soul Movement if you want to, wildsoulmovement.com/join. And that's it. We'll see you later.
A really easy access point, something that we kind of touched on a number of times. I mean, there's, like Jackie was saying, there's the whole inner rewiring aspect, and that obviously is a more in-depth process, but a really easy access point for flow is learning to use your intuition powerfully and let that be the guiding force in your life. That's one access point. And like we've been talking about in the interview, and you mentioned a couple times, is like following excitement and inspiration, right? Intuition shows up in a lot of different ways, a lot of different signals and cues and ways that it shows up. But the feelings of excitement and inspiration are forward-moving signs of intuition. They're forward-moving. They're pulling you in a certain direction, which is forward.